So Solovyov is not interested or impressed with Trump as a potential deal maker, or he doesn't even see the need for negotiations themselves because he thinks Russia's just doing great. And we'll talk about that in this video in just a moment. Before we do, and I'm going to set this so that we're going to start it at the beginning. Before we do, though, I thought this poll was interesting. So a couple weeks ago, I put out this poll. I said, set aside politics and personal feelings for or against Donald Trump. Let's suppose that you had a $10,000 bet. Given what you know about Trump's ego, bombast, transactional nature, you bet that Trump will be good for Ukraine. 17% said yes. 26% said Trump will be good for Russia. Okay. And then 58 said, I just can't predict. Okay, so that was 2 weeks ago. And then a week ago, I put out this same thing. Trump will be good for Ukraine. 26% said yes. Trump will be good for Russia. 22% said yes. And then 52% I said I just can't predict. And then it kind of swung back to where it was before. I put this out only about an hour ago. I have 800 some odd votes. Trump will be good for Ukraine. 17%, 28% for Russia, and 55% I just can't predict. So it swung a little bit over the last week, and then it came back to where it was. But even then, like before the election, this would have been good for Ukraine, 10%, 90% good for Russia, right? The reality is very different. And we're seeing that it's not, okay, we called Trump a wild card. I think he still is a wild card, but the Russians don't see him that favorably either. And here is Solovyov disparaging Trump and talking about how terrible the Ukrainians are and saber rattling and saying we don't need negotiations because after all, aren't we winning on the battlefield anyway? Here we go. Special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor, as always, for putting out this great work. I'll read his comments. Trump is absolutely easy to understand. Trump is pragmatic. He doesn't care about anything. I'll honestly tell you, he's exceptionally honest person. Okay, maybe not an exceptionally honest person, but I don't think he's easy to understand. He is pragmatic. He is very transactional in nature. Like that's the way that he actually operates, and everybody understands that. He couldn't care less about democratic values. He doesn't care for our freedom and yours. He doesn't care about the rules-based world order. What? Get lost. You want weapons? You have to pay. Now here he's talking about Trump talking about earth metals for potential U.S. support, and that's a good deal because it aligns U.S. and Ukrainian interests very nicely. Okay, what, with dollars that we gave you? Heck no. What have you got? Rare earths? Give them to us. Every time I talk to Ukrainians, who sometimes pretend to be Russian, including those who come to this studio, like what Ukrainians are pretending to be Russian? And by the way that they think about Ukrainians is that they're actually Russians who have some kind of mental disorder or something, and so they think that they're Ukrainians, but they're really Russians who are traitors to Russia. Okay, what kind of a future do you see for Ukraine? I don't see any future for Ukraine. Like he's putting that out there, point blank. I don't see any future for Ukraine. Will there be any elections? What do we care? Did the deceased break a sweat before dying? He did? That's a good sign. We have the same approach to the elections. What? Do you think elections will help? Elections are a good thing, but how can they help? Okay, but even in Russia, elections don't matter, so elections wouldn't matter in Ukraine either. So, okay, that's kind of making some sense of why they're saying what they're saying. We will be able to extract a capitulation pact to make a deal. For what? For 5 minutes? Cattell signed an act of capitulation. How did he end up? Okay, so who's Cattell? Cattell is Field Marshal Cattell, this guy here who signs the act of capitulation, and then it didn't work out so well for him after that. And he was hanged, right? I am for this. I am for this as well. But first, there should be a trial. Yes, of course, definitely. Wait a minute. Are we talking about a trial for Zelensky? Like, how backwards is it that Russia, Putin is a war criminal, and they're talking about a trial for Zelensky? Like, how bizarre. What options are there? There are no other options. It should be clearly understood. It won't happen any other way. This is your fate. You are incapable of being an independent nation. Like they're saying that point blank. Like Ukraine cannot be an independent nation. It needs to come under our I don't know, I would say tyranny, but they would say under their control or under their empire or what have you. What are you, for negotiations? Explain it to me. Why would we want a ceasefire and negotiations? No, really, what for? We are advancing very successfully. Like, he thinks they're advancing very successfully. And that's fascinating because now, if you look at what just happened, the British intelligence put this out just today that the Russians took 700 square kilometers back in November. Then they took 400 kilometers back in December and only 320 square kilometers back in January. And their speed of their advance is diminishing and diminishing. And you can see that in battlefield statistics as well. More than that, our land has still not been liberated in the Kursk region. We are successfully advancing, but we are yet to reach our constitutional borders. And that's a fascinating statement. You say that you own the constitutional borders of these 4 oblasts, and you haven't even controlled them. Like, you haven't controlled major portions of at least 2 of them. Luhansk almost completely. Donetsk, not quite, but there's still some Donetsk left out there. And then for the other 2, like, you don't control large sections of it, and yet you say that you own it. It's just fascinating to watch. That's it. Oi. It's great that our society lost all of its illusions. Finally, everyone has calmed down. Now they understand that Trump is not a peacemaker. Everything is clear and simple. So they don't think that Trump is some great peacemaker who's going to make a deal and make things work over. So it's interesting to see how they're actually dealing with Trump. They don't know what to do with him exactly. And frankly, neither do the rest of us. We'll go and polish our nuclear warheads so that no one has any illusions. We'll polish them to a mirror-like finish so that in their last moments, imperialists will see the reflection in their scared faces. Okay, so if that was their last moments, it would be your last moments too because of mutually assured destruction. So that would be a bad plan. All right, at any rate, so Solovyov is saber-rattling. He doesn't like Trump, but he doesn't know what to do with Trump. He is right that Trump is not all in it for democracy. On that point, it's very clear Trump is not about like, these are my democratic values and we must support Ukraine. He is transactional, and that's very clear, which is why he was talking about the rare earth metals. But then he also doubled down on Ukraine's not a nation, doesn't deserve to be a nation, should be, and Zelensky should be on trial, and it's some crazy stuff. Okay, I show you that so that you can see not because you should agree with what he has to say, but you should see what the Russian media is feeding to Russian people. So now you understand that, but when you're looking at Trump, they just don't know what to do with him. And I don't think Trump knows what to do either. And that's really the big story here today is that, like, for example, General Keith Kellogg was just talking about today how, no, I don't have a plan going to Munich. He's still in a data collection kind of mode, and there's no actual plan. So, okay, tell me what you think about this. Put that in the comments below. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.